Yeah? What do you mean phoning it in? Okay. Lately, I've been feeling like one of the characters from our next game. And I guess it's part of my whole life trilogy, or quadrilogy technically. This one being based around adulthood. And it's another action RPG where the combat basically functions similar to like an MMO where you have like a hotbar of skills and you just pick which skills you want to use. Nothing too complex. And the main system is mostly focused around elemental magic, kind of like the last Airbender series. You know, like earth, air, fire, water. But no one has MP in this game. Instead, they use the natural energy of the environment to leave a lasting impact depending on the spells that they use. So like air spells, they're the least damaging, but like they don't really have that much of an effect on the environment, while earth spells do the most, but change the physical landscape. Now gameplay wise, this means that like each different location, or I think specifically zones, will probably like grid them off per like little map zone, would have its own MP bar, and any spell cast there would consume the MP bar of that area, and those don't usually refill. Some places the MP might restore itself after time has passed, but after all that magic is used up, that area is like barren now, and so you're kind of screwed. And you and the enemies you fight draw from the same magic pool. So there might be like some strategies based around making it using up all the magic or locking your opponents out of magic so that they can't use it. Now each character has three separate skill trees: elemental magic, like regular weapon types, and their own personal skill. Because each character has their own personal type of skills. So, our de facto main character. Now, she's de facto because I guess the main plot focuses around her. She was chosen by the gods to go on some kind of missionary thing. And so she's been nicknamed the Endowed One. Because she has basically, she can create like infinite godly arms behind her to like do special moves, and so her special tree is different types of infinite fists. And she teams up with a partner who he's like a were whatever. Like when you start the game off, he's a were bear, so he can transform into bear. But as the game goes on, he can transform into other different animals, and so that's his skill tree. But he kind of has a rage problem. See, each of the 8 characters I have is kind of their lives are kind of like consumed by a specific negative emotion. His is rage. There's an anxiety. There's regular depression. Kind of bad stuff, like nothing that anyone really wants to have happen to them because it kind of keeps them from being effective humans. And so even though we have like this camaraderie between them, they're all still affected by their own personal stories. Our next party member is this priest who's actually just a soul that's bound to a current body. Now, his skill tree is that he can leave the body and go and do other things. In fact, his final skill is he can jump out into another body and like blow that soul up from inside and then come back. And that's going to be important later. But he's kind of a pain in the ass to play as because every time, because his body doesn't heal, so you'd have to like find new ones every so often. Oh wait, he's not a priest. The priest is someone else who has a demon trapped in him and it's slowly taking over his body. And it has its own personality and it's much worse and it hates everybody and it like wants to eat people. And like it has a little mouth on the hand and like it talks. And its main goal is to take over the whole body, and so there's skills that like affect how much the arm has taken over him. Then there's this one woman who got her heart stolen by eventually, I guess, the main villain. Like, literally ripped out like Dragon's Dogma. But also, like Dragon's Dogma, she's still alive. Kinda. And she kinda can't die now. And so she's just kind of like upset that she's still living. Because she's like, I'm like old. I'm tired. For some reason, being undead gives me necromancy powers. But whatever. And she like joins the military, I guess. And she's working with a dragon person who is kind of belittled by others because he's a dragon person and not a regular person, so he's always thought of as less. And so all of his moves are about like breathing fire and cool dragon shit. Alright, there's this one girl, she has super telekinesis, but she's blind. But she's kind of like Toph in that she can just kind of like feel everything with how her energy just explodes around her. And so she can kind of use any weapon she wants by just picking them up and just swinging them around. She's the youngest member, and the second and last member you meet is this guy who is basically a complete psychopath at this point because he's so paranoid and upset. And he's like, he wants to be the ship captain. Like, he's kind of a pirate, and he's so frustrated. Like, he's so paranoid that his energy manifests as, like, energy weapons, so he fights with, like, combos of energy weapons rather than regular weapons. And so you take a team of 4 of these 8 adventurers, and until the main plot kicks in, and I never really figured out what the main plot is, but I kinda thought of the end of the game. Because that's the most important part. How your ending actually changes depending on how much you've invested in each character's individual tree, which is kind of bad game design, but those are all the cool skills, so why wouldn't you have done that? And in it, they're at a Capitol building, and there's some bad guy who's trying to do something involving the main girl's plot. He's like trying to call the gods or whatever, and you have to get on his Zeppelin because there's fantasy Zeppelins. But he needs to be. He has his whole army trying to hold everyone off. And so the priest is like, okay, I think I know how I can hold him off. And so he lets the demon take over his entire body. And the demon's like, yes, now that I have control of this body, I can fight Dragon Man. It's going to be great. And then like he goes and just rips all the army dudes apart while everyone else is on the Zeppelin. And in the fight, the whatever guy gets knocked over, and he and the main girl are kind of like have a thing for each other now, and so she's upset. And they stop the main villain because the soul guy, he just teleports inside him and blows up his soul while he tries to do something, and so now he's inside the main bad guy's body, and he's like, well, this is weird. And so that's how the story ends. And at the time, I thought it was really interesting, or I thought it'd be really groundbreaking to then show how everyone dies. Not knowing that 6 Feet Under did this. I hadn't watched 6 Feet Under. But I thought it was crazy that they're like, oh my god, he's showing all of his main characters dying. And so there's this really big extensive epilogue while the credits are rolling where Animal Guy shows up, meets with the main girl again, and they adopt the blind girl, more or less. Through research, they figure out ways to release the soul into the afterlife and to get the necromancy, the undead lady who waited for her to finally die. And there's like this scene where she's in the temple and her body like corrodes finally. She has that smile on her face. The crazy sailor guy, he finally becomes a captain of a ship, but then he gets caught in a storm. And so he sinks with it, because that's what captains do. So he died young, tragically. And like, maybe a century after the end of the game, when pretty much everyone's passed on, Dragon Man is still checking out his own... He's just living in the mountains, because he's a dragon, he doesn't really die very often. And then the demon finally shows up and is like, hey, I've been gone out training. About time we settle this, because they've had like their little rivalry. And so after the credits are over, you play the final battle where you're the Dragon Man and you fight the demon. And then there's the one shall stand, one shall fall type deal. I believe I wrote down why everyone was upset. But I don't exactly know where I put it. I don't know if the characters actually truly get over their own personal problems, but at least with each other they're able to feel better. Or at least feel less worse.